Liara had always known her life would not be easy. Born on the planet Violia, a world of harsh deserts, violet skies, and towering crystal spires, she had learned early that society demanded obedience. Every individual had a place, every choice was measured, and every defiance punished. From the moment she could walk, she had been trained to honor her clan's rules, to marry when the elders chose, and to respect every tradition without question. But Liara had never been like other girls. Her heart and mind belonged to herself. She dreamed of running through the crystalline dunes, exploring beyond the borders of her desert city, and seeing the stars, not merely bowing to traditions she had never agreed to. Her family had tried to shape her. Her mother, a dignified woman with scales like polished bronze, had pleaded with her gently but firmly. "Liara, our people survive because we obey. You must marry the one chosen for you. It is for your safety, for your honor." But Liara had looked into her mother's eyes and felt no fear, only sorrow for the life she would never live if she yielded. She had refused. She had refused with words and with gestures that could not be ignored. And in Violia, refusal carried a price. The council had convened quickly, summoning the elders, the judges, and the military officers who enforced the laws. Liara had been brought into the grand hall, chains glinting faintly under the violet light. Her eyes were sharp amber, almost glowing against the dim crystals, and she held her head high. Many of the council members were older than she could imagine, their faces lined with wisdom and cruelty alike. They spoke of honor, of shame, of duties to the clan, and of consequences for rebellion. When the sentence was pronounced, it felt surreal. She was to be left to die in the Crimson Wastes, a barren stretch of desert where no creature survived. "You have dishonored your family and your clan," the chief elder had said, his voice low but echoing through the chamber. "You will walk alone into the sands. The sun will claim you. Let it remind others of the cost of defiance." Liara did not flinch. The chains dug into her wrists and shoulders, and the metal burned under the strange violet light of the hall, but she refused to kneel, refused to beg. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with an odd sense of freedom. Even in the face of death, she would not submit. The soldiers pushed her through the heavy doors and into the desert. Outside, the crimson waste stretched endlessly. The sand was red like blood, and the sun hung high, blazing with heat that could cook flesh. Liara could feel it pressing down, sucking moisture from her body, trying to drain her strength before the desert itself had a chance to. Step by step, she moved, but the heat made every motion painful. Her scales blistered in some places, her lips cracked, and her limbs ached. She stumbled, but she did not fall. She refused to give them the satisfaction of a broken body, and yet, as the hours passed, her strength ebbed. She could see mirages on the horizon, flickers of water and shade that vanished when she approached. The desert was patient and cruel. It waited, silent and endless, to claim her as its own. Above the dunes, a shadow passed. Liara squinted, trying to see, but the sun was harsh and unforgiving. At first, she thought it might be another patrol of the council, sent to make certain she did not survive even by chance. Her heart sank a little, but she refused to panic. She had lived her life anticipating obstacles, and she would face this one as she had faced them all, with defiance. The shadow descended. Liara's amber eyes widened as a strange craft landed in the sand nearby. It was unlike any vehicle of Violia, sleek and metallic, humming with energy that she had never seen. The air shimmered around it as it stabilized, and a door opened. Out stepped a being unlike any she had ever encountered. He was tall, human in form, with pale skin that seemed almost fragile against the harsh desert. His armor glinted in the sunlight, decorated with markings she did not recognize. His eyes were calm but alert, scanning the desert before landing on her. Liara instinctively crouched, unsure of what to do. Humans were not unknown to the outer rim of Violia, but they rarely intervened in local affairs. Most stayed in their ships, observing, recording, or moving on. This one, however, had descended into her death sentence. He approached slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice carrying a strange warmth. Liara did not trust him, but she did not answer. The chains weighed her down, her body trembling. The desert was claiming her, but this human, against all logic, seemed to offer a lifeline. He moved closer, ignoring the intense heat, and finally knelt beside her. "You cannot survive out here alone," he said. "I can help you. You will not die today." He reached out a hand. Liara's instinct screamed at her to refuse, to push away the stranger who had no right to interfere. But something in his eyes stopped her. He did not look at her as property, as a subject to control. He looked at her as a person, a being worthy of survival. For the first time in hours, maybe in her life, someone saw her as more than a choice, more than a rebel. They saw her as alive. With a surge of effort, Liara allowed him to lift her. His grip was firm but careful, and she felt herself lifted into a strange, metallic cradle that hummed with power. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry and her body weak. The human, sensing her condition, activated the ship's life support, surrounding her with cool, breathable air. The heat of the crimson wastes faded slightly as the ship's systems compensated, and Liara finally allowed herself a shiver. The coldness of the machine air was strange, but it was life. She looked at him, her amber eyes sharp but curious. Why help me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He smiled faintly, but there was no mockery in it. "Because no one deserves to die for defiance. Freedom, it is worth protecting wherever it exists." His words struck her in a way nothing else had. On Violia, freedom was a concept taught to children in stories, but in practice, it was a trap. Liara had never believed anyone could risk themselves for it. And yet here he was, a human, far from his home world, risking danger to save her life. The ship lifted off with a hum, carrying them above the endless crimson sands. Below, she could see the vast desert stretching endlessly. The chains had been removed, and she flexed her hands, feeling the small bruises and cuts that marked her defiance. She did not feel fear now, only a strange mixture of relief, confusion, and cautious hope. She still did not trust this human entirely, but she recognized that he had given her a choice, and choice was something she had never truly had before. As the ship moved away from the planet, Liara studied him. His movements were confident, precise, but there was no arrogance in them. He had been trained, certainly, but he treated her as an equal in need, not a fragile being to control. She felt a pang of respect she had not anticipated. Perhaps he was like her in some ways, someone who understood the value of survival, of defiance, and of living according to one's own will. Hours passed as they traveled through the upper atmosphere and into the void of space. Liara learned to breathe in the artificial air, to trust the systems of the human-s craft, and to accept that, for now, her survival depended on him. The initial fear faded, replaced by a simmering determination. She would not be weak. She would not merely survive, she would learn, adapt, and when the time came, she would claim her freedom fully. The human spoke little during the journey, but when he did, it was with purpose. "You are stronger than you realize," he said. "Most people in your situation would have given up long ago. You didn't. That matters. That is rare." Liara looked at him, not sure how to respond. She had never been praised for defiance, only punished for it. The acknowledgement felt strange but empowering. As the stars stretched before them, Liara felt a tiny spark of hope. Perhaps her fate was not fixed. Perhaps her life was not entirely bound by the cruel traditions of her people. Perhaps survival, even in a galaxy of strangers, was possible. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had found someone who understood that the greatest rebellion was not violence or anger, but the simple act of living on one's own terms. For the first time, Liara closed her eyes and allowed herself to rest. The desert, the chains, the council's decree, all of it faded behind her. Above her, in the quiet hum of a human ship, she was alive, truly alive. And that, she realized, was only the beginning. Liara awoke slowly, the hum of the human ship filling her ears. The first thing she noticed was the absence of the burning sun, the endless red sand, and the oppressive heat of the crimson wastes. Instead, there was cool air brushing against her scales, a soft light illuminating the cabin, and the gentle vibrations of the ship as it moved through the void of space. She sat up cautiously, feeling weak but alive, her limbs stiff from the long hours of travel. Rylan was seated a few meters away, monitoring the ship's controls. He had paused when he noticed her stirring and turned, his eyes meeting hers. "You're awake," he said simply. There was no surprise, no unnecessary praise, only calm observation. It was strange for Liara, who was used to every human and Violean authority either looking down on her or commanding her. This human seemed to treat her as if her very survival was already proof of strength. "I am," Liara said hoarsely, her voice barely above a whisper. Her throat still burned from the dehydration she had suffered. "Where are we?" "Space," Rylan replied plainly, as if it were the most natural answer in the world. "Above Violia, far enough that no one can reach you. For now, you are safe." He moved toward her with a small container of water. Liara accepted it, her hands trembling as she drank. The cool liquid slid down her throat, bringing relief she hadn't realized she craved so deeply. She drank slowly, savoring every drop. As her strength returned, she studied him carefully. His face was human, pale and angular, but his eyes were kind and sharp at the same time. His hair was dark and kept short, practical for someone who spent long hours in the suit of armor she had seen him wear. There was an air of authority about him, but not the rigid, oppressive authority she was used to. There was patience. There was respect. And most of all, there was a hint of curiosity, as if he wanted to understand her, not just control her. Why help me?" she asked again, the question pressing against her chest. She had lived her life in a world where people only acted out of duty, fear, or self-interest. No one had ever helped her simply because it was right. Rylan considered her question for a moment before replying. "Because freedom matters," he said finally. "Everyone has the right to choose their own life. You are about to be killed for defying a tradition. That is wrong. And I cannot stand by while that happens." His words were simple, but they carried weight. Liara felt a mixture of disbelief and hope. Someone had risked their life for her, not because she was special or powerful, but because she was alive, and that alone deserved protection. The ship was quiet after that. Liara looked out the viewport at the vast darkness of space, dotted with distant stars and planets she could not name. She had always dreamed of seeing the stars, but never thought she would experience it so intimately, floating above her home planet, free from the chains that had bound her body and spirit. The emptiness of space was both frightening and exhilarating. She realized how small she had been on Violia, how trapped by rules and expectations, and now, for the first time, she felt limitless. Rylan broke the silence. "We need to talk about what comes next," he said. "You cannot return to Violia. They will never forgive your defiance. If we go back, they will send soldiers, drones, maybe even warships. You will be hunted." Liara's heart sank slightly at the words. The thought of leaving her home, her family, and everything she had known was terrifying. But as she considered it, she realized something she hadn't admitted to herself before. She had never truly belonged there. Her family and clan valued obedience over individuality, submission over courage. She had been an outcast from the moment she defied them, even if they hadn't punished her yet. Perhaps being hunted was not the end, but a chance at a life she had never been allowed to live. "I understand," she said quietly. I will not return. Not while they seek to control me." Her voice was soft but firm. Rylan nodded, as if expecting no less. The next few hours were spent learning about the ship. Liara had never seen technology like this before. The controls, the displays, the systems that maintained life and movement in the void. It was overwhelming at first. But Rylan guided her patiently, showing her how to monitor the ship's energy, how to adjust the course, how to communicate with other ships if necessary. She was a quick learner, her mind sharp and focused despite her fatigue. With each passing hour, she felt more capable, more alive, and more determined. As they traveled through space, Liara began to speak about her life on Violia. She told Rylan about the traditions, the councils, the ceremonies, and the punishments. She spoke of the Crimson Wastes, the desert that had been meant to end her life, and the fear and anger that had accompanied her every step there. Rylan listened silently, nodding occasionally, never interrupting, never judging. It was the first time she had spoken of her pain to anyone and been met with empathy rather than dismissal. "You were very brave," he said when she finished. "Most people would have given up long before they reached the wastes. You survived when almost everyone would have perished. That is remarkable." Liara felt a strange warmth at his words. She was not used to praise, especially for defiance. On Violia, bravery was measured only by obedience and service, never by choosing one's own path. She realized that perhaps her courage had value beyond survival. It could be meaningful in a world where choices mattered. Days passed aboard the ship. Liara recovered physically, regaining strength and stamina, but she also began to change mentally. She started to understand that her life was no longer bound by the rules of Violia. She began practicing basic maneuvers with Rylan, learning how to handle small tasks on the ship, how to respond in emergencies, and how to think strategically. The human soldier was patient and careful, always explaining why he did things a certain way and encouraging her to try herself. Liara felt herself growing stronger, not just physically, but in confidence and self-reliance. One evening, as the ship glided past a distant nebula, Rylan initiated a conversation that surprised her. "Do you want to fight back?" he asked. His voice was calm, measured, but there was intensity in his gaze. "Not just survive, but fight for your freedom, maybe even for others like you." Liara considered this. Fighting back had never been her first thought. Her survival had always been enough. But now, seeing the vastness of space, feeling the warmth of her own strength returning, she realized she did not want to merely survive. She wanted to claim her life fully, to defy those who sought to control her, and to ensure that others would not suffer as she had. I think I do," she said slowly. Her amber eyes shone with determination. "I want to live my life my way, and if I can, maybe help others do the same." Rylan nodded approvingly. "Good, you will need to learn more. Strategy, combat, navigation, and understanding alien technology. You already have courage and intelligence. The rest we can teach." He paused and looked at her thoughtfully. "You have a fire that many lose before they even find it. It's rare." The following days were filled with training. Liara practiced controlling the ship systems, learning to anticipate potential dangers, and handling the small arms the ship carried for defense. She discovered that her agility, speed, and instincts, skills honed in the desert, made her remarkably adept at maneuvering in zero gravity. Rylan tested her with exercises that simulated emergencies, fires in the engine room, hull breaches, and hostile encounters with unknown ships. Each time, Liara adapted quickly, surprising even herself. Despite the rigorous training, there were moments of quiet between them. They would sit together in the observation deck, watching distant stars and nebulas, sharing stories of their worlds. Liara spoke of the crystalline cities of Violia, of the deserts, the ceremonies, and the elders. Rylan spoke of Earth, the humans' efforts to explore the galaxy, and the lessons he had learned in his life as a soldier. In these moments, Liara felt something she had never experienced: trust. Not blind trust, but a cautious, growing faith that this human had no hidden motives. He wanted to protect her, to teach her, and perhaps even to understand her. One night, as a purple star rose on the horizon of a nearby planet, Liara voiced a fear that had been buried deep within her. "I am afraid," she admitted quietly. "Afraid that I will never truly belong anywhere, that no matter what I do, I am always an outcast." Rylan considered her words carefully. "You don't belong where you were forced," he said finally. "But you can belong where you choose. Outcasts are not weak, they are free. You have a chance to live a life others only dream of. That is not something to fear, that is something to embrace." Liara reflected on this. He was right. She had been given a second chance, a chance to escape the chains of her world and define her own path. She felt a flicker of hope, fragile but real. Perhaps the galaxy, vast and unknown, could be her home. Perhaps freedom was not a dream, but a reality she could shape. As they traveled together through the darkness, Liara realized that survival alone was no longer enough. She wanted more. She wanted to explore, to learn, to fight for her freedom, and maybe one day to return, not to submit, but to challenge, to change, to inspire. Rylan had saved her from death, but it was her courage, her intelligence, and her determination that would shape her destiny, and she was ready to embrace it. The journey ahead was uncertain. Dangers awaited, from hostile forces to the unknown perils of space. But Liara felt a sense of purpose that had been absent in her life until now. She was no longer merely surviving, she was preparing to live. And with Rylan by her side, someone who respected her choices and strength, she knew that the universe, vast and unforgiving, could also be full of possibility, hope, and freedom. The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly around them, but Liara felt a fire burning within her that no void could contain. For days she had trained under Rylan's careful guidance, learning the ways of the human soldier, mastering the ship systems, and preparing for the dangers that surely awaited. She had grown stronger, faster, and more confident than she had ever imagined possible. Yet despite all her preparation, nothing could have readied her for the moment when danger arrived so suddenly. It began with a warning signal, red and insistent, blinking across the ship's main console. Rylan's eyes narrowed as he scanned the incoming data. "Violian warships," he said in a low, tense voice. "They've tracked us, they know where you are." Liara's heart leapt into her throat. Her people, those who had left her to die, had found her. She had barely survived the crimson wastes. The thought of being hunted once again was terrifying, but this time she did not feel helpless. She was not alone. She had learned, trained, and adapted, and now she would fight. Ryland's hands moved quickly over the controls, maneuvering the ship toward a nearby asteroid field. "We can hide there for a while," he said, "but we won't outrun them for long. You'll need to be ready." Liara's amber eyes shone with determination. "I am ready," she said, her voice steady and confident, surprised even herself. She had been terrified of death before, but now she felt the power of her own courage, the strength born from survival and freedom. She knew that this fight was not just about escaping. It was about proving that she would not be controlled or defeated. As the Violian warships closed in, Ryland guided their ship into the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks that floated silently in space. The enemy's sensors struggled to track them, but the danger was constant. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and their ship would be crushed. Liara felt the tension in her chest, but she focused, remembering every lesson Ryland had taught her. Suddenly, a warning siren blared. A laser beam from one of the Violian ships struck nearby, sending debris spinning through the void. Liara reacted instantly, moving to assist Ryland. She monitored the ship's defensive systems, directing energy to shields and weapons, her fingers flying over controls with precision and speed. Her mind was sharp, her instincts honed by years of survival in the desert. She was no longer just a passenger. She was a fighter, a partner, and a strategist. The battle escalated quickly. The Violians, confident in their numbers, attempted to surround them. Liara's heart pounded as she calculated angles, trajectories, and possible maneuvers. She remembered Ryland's lessons: anticipate, adapt, and act decisively. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she shouted, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. Ryland looked at her, a spark of pride in his eyes. "You've learned well," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. Liara guided the ship through a narrow passage between two massive asteroids, using the rocks as cover. Laser beams struck the surfaces around them, sending flashes of light and clouds of rock into space. The enemy's ship fired again, narrowly missing their hull. Liara felt a thrill of fear and exhilaration, the same sensation she had felt in the desert, running across burning sands with death close behind. But now she was not alone. Ryland was beside her, and together they were unstoppable. The Violian forces were relentless, but Liara had a plan. Using her knowledge of speed, angles, and the environment, she coordinated with Ryland to create a series of traps. They lured the enemy ships into the densest parts of the asteroid field, where collisions were more likely. The strategy worked. One by one, the Violian ships collided with asteroids or with each other, their destruction leaving the remaining vessels confused and off balance. Liara's confidence grew with every maneuver. She felt alive in a way she never had on Violia. Her mind was clear, her body ready, and her spirit unbreakable. The desert had tested her, but space had refined her. She realized that her strength came not just from her skills, but from her refusal to accept a life dictated by others. Each decision, each calculated risk, was a declaration of her independence. Amid the chaos, Liara saw one of the smaller enemy crafts attempting to flank them. Without hesitation, she grabbed a control module and engaged the ship's auxiliary weapons. She fired carefully, disabling the craft's engines. Sparks flew as it drifted helplessly, unable to continue its attack. Ryland looked at her, a mixture of surprise and admiration on his face. "Excellent work," he said simply. "You've got the instincts of a veteran soldier." Liara allowed herself a brief smile, but there was no time to celebrate. More ships were approaching, and the battle was far from over. She focused on the task at hand, directing energy, coordinating maneuvers, and making split-second decisions. Her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, but her body moved with precision. Every action was a testament to her training, her courage, and her refusal to be defeated. As the battle raged on, Liara began to notice something remarkable. Some of the Violian pilots were hesitating. They were skilled, but they had underestimated her. They had expected a frightened, weak outcast, someone who would be easily overpowered. Instead, they faced a being who was clever, fearless, and determined. Liara realized that her defiance, her courage, and her refusal to submit were powerful weapons in themselves. Ryland and Liara worked seamlessly together. Their communication was unspoken at times, a series of glances, gestures, and instinctive decisions that guided them through the chaos. She had never felt such a bond before. Not with her family, not with her clan, not even with friends. Here, in the void of space, she had found a partner who respected her, trusted her, and relied on her. And she trusted him in return. Finally, after hours of maneuvering, the remaining Virelian ships were retreating. Liara and Rylan had survived, their ship battered but intact. The silence after the battle was profound. Stars stretched endlessly around them, distant and indifferent, but Liara felt a sense of triumph that warmed her entire being. She had faced death, not just survived, but contributed to victory. She was no longer the girl left to die in the Crimson Wastes. She was a fighter, a strategist, and a survivor. As they assessed the damage to their ship, Liara allowed herself to relax slightly. She was exhausted, her body aching, but her mind was clear and focused. She had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. She looked at Rylan, whose calm demeanor belied the intensity of the battle they had just survived. "We did it," she said softly. Rylan nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Yes, we did, and it's only the beginning. There will be more challenges ahead, more dangers, but you've proven something important today." He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "You are more than capable. You are strong, clever, and brave, and you are free to choose your own path." Liara felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, pride, and determination. For the first time in her life, she understood the true meaning of freedom. It was not simply escaping death, nor avoiding punishment. It was living with courage, making choices, and facing the consequences with strength. She had been given a second chance, and she would not waste it. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, Liara thought about her people, her clan, and the traditions she had left behind. She felt a pang of sadness, not for herself, but for those who had been trapped by the same rules she had defied. Perhaps one day she could return, not to submit but to inspire, to show that courage and freedom were more powerful than fear and obedience. But for now, there was only the present, the journey, and the bond she had formed with Rylan. Together, they navigated the unknown, facing dangers and challenges that would have been impossible alone. Liara realized that survival was no longer enough. She wanted to live fully, to explore, to grow, and to fight for the freedom of herself and others. And she knew that with Rylan by her side, anything was possible. As the stars stretched endlessly around them, Liara felt a sense of purpose and determination that burned brighter than any sun. She was no longer the girl left to die. She was a survivor, a fighter, and a being capable of shaping her own destiny. And this was only the beginning of her journey. The asteroid field had faded behind them, leaving only the endless expanse of space stretching ahead. Liara sat quietly in the observation deck, staring at the distant stars. Each point of light seemed impossibly far away, yet somehow reachable. After the battle with the Virelian warships, she had proven to herself what she was capable of: survival, strategy, and courage. But she knew the challenges were far from over. Rylan had warned her that the Council would not forget her defiance. They would send more ships, more soldiers, and perhaps even stronger forces. Yet, for the first time in her life, she did not feel fear. She felt purpose. Rylan entered the observation deck, his presence calm but authoritative. "We've been detected again," he said, pointing to a display showing distant blips moving toward them. "The Council won't give up easily. They want you back or they want you gone. Either way, we have to prepare." Liara turned, her amber eyes shining with determination. "Then we fight," she said simply. She had learned the lessons of survival and courage, and now she understood the meaning of defiance. Survival alone was not enough. She had to claim her life fully, to shape her destiny instead of letting it be dictated by others. Rylan nodded. "Good, you've grown stronger than I could have imagined. I'll need your instincts, your speed, and your courage." He handed her a control module, one used for both navigation and combat systems. "This will allow you to control parts of the ship remotely. You'll be able to manage defenses while I pilot. Are you ready?" Liara took the module, feeling its weight in her hands. She nodded. "I am ready." The words felt powerful as they left her mouth, a declaration not just to Rylan but to herself. She had been left to die in the Crimson Wastes, abandoned by her people for refusing to obey, yet here she was, alive, trained, and ready to face impossible odds. The first Virelian scout appeared almost immediately, its sleek form cutting across the void. Liara directed the ship's defenses, activating shields and maneuvering turrets. The small vessel fired on them, but Liara anticipated its movements, predicting its path with precision. Lasers met shields, sparks flying across the viewport as energy clashed. Her pulse raced, but her mind was clear. Every maneuver, every decision was a statement of her independence, her courage, and her refusal to be controlled. More ships emerged, a small fleet this time. The Council had clearly decided that she could not escape so easily. Rylan and Liara moved as one, their coordination seamless. She handled the defense systems, rerouting energy to shields where it was needed most, while Rylan piloted the ship with calculated precision. Together, they used the asteroid fields, gravitational anomalies, and even the ship's own decoys to confuse and divide the enemy forces. Liara felt a strange thrill, a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination. The desert had taught her patience, awareness, and speed, but space demanded more: strategy, calculation, and courage under pressure. She had mastered all of it in days, proving that the human had not misjudged her abilities. She was more than a survivor. She was a fighter, capable of influencing the course of battle. One of the Viorlian ships attempted to flank them, aiming for the ship's engines. Liara anticipated the move and activated a series of countermeasures. Explosive charges deployed from the ship's hull, forcing the enemy to swerve and crash into a nearby asteroid. The rest of the fleet hesitated, momentarily confused by the display of tactics. Liara's heart pounded in her chest, but she remained calm, focusing on the task at hand. Rylan glanced at her, a faint smile on his face. "You're incredible," he said. "I've trained soldiers for years, and I've never seen instincts like yours." Liara felt warmth at his words, but she did not allow it to distract her. Praise was welcome, but the battle was far from over. More ships approached, and she had to be ready for anything. Each moment was a test of skill, courage, and resilience, and she met every challenge head-on. As the battle intensified, Liara realized something remarkable. Her defiance, her courage, and her refusal to submit were not just saving her, they were inspiring others. Some of the Viorlian pilots hesitated, unsure how to face an enemy who would not bow, who would not break, and who fought with skill and intelligence. Fear is a powerful weapon, and Liara wielded it without violence simply by being unyielding. The fight continued for hours, the stars around them streaking as the ship maneuvered with speed and precision. Liara's amber eyes never left the displays, her mind calculating, her reflexes sharp. She had become a master of the ship's systems, a strategist in the chaos of battle, and a force that the Council had not anticipated. Finally, the remaining Viorlian ships retreated, unable to overcome the skill, courage, and coordination of Liara and Rylan. The void fell silent once more, save for the hum of their damaged ship. Liara allowed herself a moment to breathe, feeling the adrenaline slowly ebb. She had faced her pursuers, defied her people, and survived against impossible odds. Rylan turned to her, his expression serious but proud. "You've done it. You've proven that no one can control you, that courage and skill can overcome fear and oppression. You are free, Liara." Truly free? Liara looked out at the stars, her mind filled with thoughts of the future. Freedom was no longer a dream. It was a reality she had earned through courage, determination, and resilience. She had survived the Crimson Wastes, mastered the human ship, and defeated the Council's forces. She had grown stronger than she had ever imagined, and now she could choose her own path. I never thought I would feel like this," she said softly. "Alive, free, in control of my own life. I always thought my choices were limited, that my fate was sealed by tradition. But now I can decide everything for myself." Rylan nodded, his gaze steady. "And you will. The galaxy is vast, and there are endless possibilities. You can explore, learn, and grow, and when you're ready, you can even help others find freedom just as you have." Liara felt a surge of hope. She thought of her clan, her family, and the world she had left behind. She felt sadness for the constraints they lived under, for the fear that controlled their lives. But she also felt resolve. She would not return to Viorlia as a subject. She would return one day, if at all, not to submit, but to inspire, to challenge, and to show that courage, choice, and freedom were stronger than fear and tradition. For now, however, her journey lay ahead in the endless expanse of space. With Rylan by her side, she felt capable of facing anything. They were no longer merely a human and an alien. Together, they were a team, partners bound by trust, respect, and shared purpose. As the ship moved past distant stars and planets, Liara finally allowed herself a small smile. She had survived what no one expected, she had proven her strength, and she had embraced her freedom. The galaxy stretched before her, vast and unknown, full of challenges and opportunities. And for the first time in her life, she felt completely alive. The stars outside the viewport shimmered like promises waiting to be fulfilled. Liara turned to Rylan, her amber eyes reflecting determination and hope. "Where do we go next?" she asked, her voice steady. Rylan smiled faintly. "Anywhere you choose. The galaxy is ours to explore." Liara nodded, feeling the thrill of possibility coursing through her. She had been left to die, abandoned for refusing to obey, but now she was alive, free, and stronger than anyone could have imagined. The human beside her had saved her life, but it was her courage, her intelligence, and her refusal to submit that had truly changed her fate. Together, they piloted the ship into the unknown, leaving behind the chains of tradition, fear, and expectation. Liara felt her heart swell with hope and determination. The universe was vast, full of dangers, mysteries, and wonders, but for the first time she was not afraid. She was alive, free, and ready to shape her own destiny. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, she realized something profound. Freedom was not a gift. It was something to fight for, something to claim, and something to protect. She had done all that, and now the galaxy awaited. Liara leaned back in her seat, feeling the hum of the ship beneath her, the steady presence of Ryland beside her, and the endless possibilities ahead. She had survived, she had fought, and she had grown. The girl who had been left to die in the Crimson Wastes was gone. In her place stood a warrior, a strategist, a survivor, and above all, a free being. The stars beckoned, distant and shimmering, and Liara knew that no matter what dangers lay ahead, she would face them with courage, intelligence, and unbreakable determination. She had claimed her life. She had claimed her freedom. And the universe, vast and endless, was hers to explore.